Welcome to the Forbidden Archives. Today we are cracking open a stack of suppressed
The
histories.
kind of records the maesters of the Citadel would probably prefer we just, leave gathering dust in the dark.
Exactly. We're pulling directly from George R.R. Martin's novella The Mystery Knight, and we're layering it with the grand sweeping context found in the world of Ice and Fire.
Right, because our mission for this deep dive is to reconstruct a history that the world has actively tried to gloss over. It's a dark one.
It really is. You see, usually when we talk about history's greatest conflicts, the sequels follow a pretty predictable pattern. I mean, they escalate, right?
Yeah, almost always.
Yeah.
You expect things to get bigger and bloodier.
Right. You look back at the first Blackfyre Rebellion in Westeros, and it is the absolute definition of a glorious apocalyptic bloodbath.
Oh, it's a total cataclysm.
The texts tell us tens of thousands of men died screaming in the mud of the red grass field. It was a war of absolute titans.
Literal gods among men, wielding Valyrian steel swords, just shattering the seven kingdoms to decide who gets to sit on the Iron Throne.
Yeah. A war of destiny fought with fire and blood. When you read the primary sources detailing an event like the Red Grass Field, you are forced to picture this monumental clash of ideals.
You had King Daemon the Good on one side, representing the established order,
Right.
and his half-brother Daemon Blackfyre on the other, representing martial prowess and rebellion. The fate of an entire continent was decided by the swing of a legendary sword.
And a sky blackened by arrows. It set a terrifying benchmark for what a civil war in Westeros actually looks like.
It really did.
So naturally, when you dive into the archives and see a chapter titled The Second Blackfyre Rebellion, you brace yourself for round two.
You absolutely expect an even bigger clash.
Like, more dragons, more Valyrian steel, more earth-shattering battles that just leave the realm in ashes.
But the records we're looking at today reveal something, well, something entirely different.
Yeah, because history, as we're about to see, has an incredibly wicked sense of irony.
What we are unearthing in this deep dive is not a heroic tale of swords and sorcery. Not at all.
Far from it. The Second Blackfyre Rebellion promised a glorious apocalypse, but the grim reality of the historical record shows us what it actually delivered.
Which was the greatest, most humiliating political trap ever sprung in the history of the Seven Kingdoms.
It's amazing. It is a masterclass in espionage, human delusion, and the brutal consequences of believing your own myth.
And to really grasp the sheer psychological horror of this trap, I want to put you, the listener, right in the middle of it.
Yeah, put yourself in the mud-caked boots of a minor Westerosi lord in the year 212 AC.
Just try to imagine it. You barely survived the first rebellion 16 years ago.
Your family was bled entirely dry by the crown's punishments. I mean, they took your lands, they took your gold, they took your hostages.
You were exhausted. You were just trying to keep your head down and survive the lingering drought.
And a recent plague that swept the land. And now, out of nowhere, you receive an invitation to a wedding.
But this isn't just any wedding.
No, it's a gathering at a gleaming white castle. And as the wine flows and the whispers start, you slowly realize it is secretly a treasonous snare.
The tension in the air would be suffocating.
Oh, completely.
The guests are looking over their shoulders, trying to parse every conversation for hidden meanings, knowing that a single misplaced word could mean their execution.
So I'm asking you directly, would you risk the total, utter extinction of your bloodline for a handsome young man who plays the fiddle and relies on dreams?
It's a wild gamble. Would you gamble your family's future on a whispered promise in a crowded hall?
Because that is the exact choice these lords had to make, and the way it plays out is terrifying.
The architects of this second rebellion expected an epic clash of destiny.
Right.
They genuinely believed they had all the pieces assembled on the board.
Right, like a fortified castle, a royal claimant with the right blood, and a literal petrified dragon egg.
They thought they were building a new empire from the ashes of their old defeat.
But the tragedy, and honestly the dark comedy of this event, is that they were completely blind to the fact that they were walking straight into a slaughterhouse.
Exactly. The sequel to the bloodiest civil war in history didn't end with a heroic clash of armies.
No, it ended with a pathetic whimper, a golden chain, and a prophecy that was hilariously, fatally misunderstood.
So let's start peeling back the layers of this viper's nest.
Yeah, to understand how doomed this enterprise was from the jump, we have to look at the board as it was set at Castle Whitewalls.
The year is 212 AC. The realm is at a tense official peace.
The fighting from the First Rebellion stopped over a decade and a half ago, but the wounds from the Red Grass Field, they are festering.
Oh, absolutely festering. And the setting itself, Castle Whitewalls, serves as a brilliant physical manifestation of the political climate.
It really does. The castle is a relatively new structure built of gleaming milk-white stone.
It's meant to project wealth, purity, and unassailable power.
And it's surrounded by these incredibly colorful, festive, tourney pavilions. Silks and banners blowing in the wind.
But the text described the sky above the castle during this event as a sickly, bruising gray.
Right. The atmosphere is just oppressive. The weather is unseasonably hot and sticky.
It looks like a grand celebration, but the underlying mood is entirely funereal.
A beautiful facade hiding something completely rotten, because the official cover story for this massive gathering is the wedding of Lord Ambrose Butterwell to a Frey bride.
A joyous union between two wealthy houses.
Yeah, Lord Butterwell's wealth comes from dairy, so his heraldry is literally undulating cows.
It sounds so harmless.
It does. But the reality is that this is a traitor's tourney.
If you examine the guest list, the underlying treason becomes glaringly obvious.
Right, these aren't the mighty, victorious lords who stood with the Iron Throne during the First War.
You don't see the Starks or the Arryns or the Lannisters here.
No, these guests are the pardoned Blackfyre loyalists.
These are the men who fought against the Crown 16 years ago and lost everything.
The Crown spared their lives, but stripped them of their wealth, their prime lands, and most importantly, their pride.
We really need to spotlight a guy like Lord Gorman Peake to understand the venom driving this gathering.
Yeah, Peake is fascinating. House Peake is an ancient, incredibly proud house from the Reach. They used to boast 3 massive ancestral castles.
3 of them.
Right. But because Gorman Peake backed the Black Dragon in the First War, the Crown took 2 of those castles away.
He lost Dustinbury and Whitegrove.
2 out of 3 castles. He's walking around Whitewalls with 3 castles still stitched onto his orange cloak, but everyone knows 2 of them are ghosts.
That loss is the psychological engine driving this entire conspiracy.
It is.
These rebel lords are not fighting for some shining, noble ideal. They aren't trying to build a better Westeros or install a philosopher king who will govern justly.
No, they're fighting out of a deeply ingrained acidic spite.
It's an incredibly lethal combination of spite and a massive sunk cost fallacy.
They have already sacrificed so much blood and treasure for the Blackfyre cause that they feel compelled to double down.
Exactly. It's a desperate hunger to reclaim their lost glory. They are looking backward, staring at the ghosts of the red grass field, rather than looking forward.
They operate under the delusion that if they just try one more time, they can somehow rewrite history.
And erase the humiliation of the past.
It reminds me of an underground gathering of disgraced, exiled corporate executives.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Imagine these guys pooling their last pennies for a hostile takeover, sitting in a crumbling boardroom, looking at a pie chart that is 90% red.
And convincing themselves that their past catastrophic failures somehow guarantee future success.
Right. They're telling each other, we've got the market right where we want it, but really they just want their corner offices back.
And that raises a vital historical question about the nature of feudal loyalty.
Are lords like Gorman Peake actually loyal to the Black Dragon? Like, do they genuinely care about the Blackfyre bloodline sitting on the Iron Throne?
Or are they just using this rebellion and this new royal figurehead as a convenient vehicle for their own vengeance against the crown?
The evidence heavily points to the latter, honestly.
Lord Peake doesn't love the young man at the center of this plot. He loves the leverage that young man represents.
The Blackfyre claimant is simply a mechanism for Peake to get his 2 castles back.
The cause is a romantic cloak draped over their personal greed and their wounded egos.
Men like Peake are willing to tear the realm apart and plunge thousands of small folk into the meat grinder of war just to soothe their own bruised pride.
And to really understand how fragile this entire enterprise is, we have to look at the figurehead they're pinning all these desperate hopes on.
We have to look at the dreamer at the center of the conspiracy.
Young man with the fiddle.
Right, so wandering around this tense, brooding castle is a guy calling himself John the Fiddler.
He's a strikingly handsome young knight.
He has flowing black hair, he plays the fiddle, he charms the ladies, and he seems almost too gentle for the brutal world he's living in.
But there is a massive, almost supernatural tell.
Yes. Witnesses claim that in the right light, his shadow takes the shape of a dragon.
It's a beautifully evocative detail from the sources.
It really is. And as the towering hedge knight, Sir Duncan the Tall, or Dunk as he's known soon discovers, This man is not a simple wandering bard.
Let's actually pause and define what a hedge knight is, because Dunk's perspective is how we experience this whole story.
Oh, good point. So a hedge knight is the absolute bottom rung of the chivalric ladder in Westeros.
They don't have land, they don't have a castle, they don't have a liege lord.
They sleep under hedges, literally, and own nothing but their horse, their armor, and their sword.
They're basically itinerant freelancers, wandering from tourney to tourney, hoping to win prize money or get hired as muscle.
They have no political power and zero legal protection.
Which makes Dunk's presence at this gathering of high lords so fascinating.
Yeah, he's a massive 7-foot-tall outsider looking in at the mechanics of power.
And he is the one who unravels the identity of Jon the Fiddler.
This charming bard is actually Daemon II Blackfyre.
The Black Dragon himself.
He is the son of Daemon I, the warrior king who was struck down by a rain of arrows at the Redgrass Field.
This young man has crossed the narrow sea from exile in Essos, sneaking into Westeros in absolute secret to be the guest of honor at Whitewalls.
But the deeper you dig into his motivations, the stranger it gets.
Yeah. Daemon II isn't driven by tactical genius.
He doesn't have a brilliant logistical mind or a master political strategy for conquering the Seven Kingdoms.
He is fueled entirely by his own dragon dreams.
We have to unpack what dragon dreams mean in this lore.
The Targaryen bloodline, and by extension the Blackfyre bloodline, which is a branch of the same family tree, has a documented history of prophetic visions.
Hundreds of years prior, a woman named Daenys the Dreamer foresaw the apocalyptic doom of Valyria, which is the only reason the Targaryens survived.
So these dreams are treated as historical fact, not just fantasy.
Daemon genuinely believes, down to his very bones, that a living, breathing dragon is going to hatch from a petrified stone dragon egg right there at Castle Whitewalls.
He believes a literal rock is going to hatch into a weapon of mass destruction.
He does, because in his mind, that hatching is the ultimate, undeniable signal from the gods.
It is the universe itself proving his divine right to claim the Iron Throne.
A living dragon would instantly legitimize his rule in the eyes of every lord in Westeros.
So the actual mechanics of this treason are deeply tied to the tourney itself.
The conspirators, specifically Gorman Peake, have manipulated the entire event.
The prize for winning the jousting tournament is this priceless heavy stone dragon egg, which belongs to Lord Butterwell.
The grand plan is to rig the joust so that Daemon, competing as Jon the Fiddler, wins the egg.
It's basically a coronation ceremony cleverly disguised as a sporting event.
He wins the egg, the dragon hatches out of the stone, the lords drop to their knees, and boom, the Second Rebellion is launched with a magical nuke on their side.
But we need to talk about the sheer logistical nightmare of rigging a medieval joust.
Oh, yeah. You don't just bribe the referee.
A joust involves massive men on war horses charging at each other with heavy wooden lances.
To ensure Daemon wins, Peake has to bribe other knights to take falls, arrange the brackets so Daemon faces exhausted or compliant opponents, and secretly tire out any legitimate threat.
It requires a massive web of corruption.
And the danger of relying on this rigged system while simultaneously banking on a magical prophecy is profound.
When you introduce prophecy into a military or political strategy, it completely neutralizes tactical caution.
Because you fundamentally believe you cannot lose. The script is already written.
Precisely. It makes an arrogant prince believe he is utterly invincible, because destiny is acting as his shield.
If you truly believe the gods have ordained your victory and are going to hand you a living dragon, why would you bother checking your supply lines?
Right. Why would you worry about counterintelligence or spies in your camp?
You stop playing the board, you stop calculating risks, and you start waiting for miracles.
Prophecy breeds a fatal kind of complacency.
It makes me wonder about Daemon's true nature.
How so?
If he genuinely believes his own dreams, if he really thinks the universe is guiding him to this castle to hatch a dragon, does that make him a tragic figure rather than a malicious conqueror?
That's a great question.
Is he just a victim of his own royal bloodline and the genetic delusions that come with it?
He is, in many ways, a pawn of his own ancestry.
Right.
He is acting out a script written by his father's failures and his own biological connection to these magical visions.
He isn't inherently cruel or sociopathic. He's described as quite gentle compared to the hardened warlords around him.
But he is dangerously deluded. And in a world as brutal and unforgiving as Westeros, delusion is often just as destructive to the realm as pure malice.
And we see exactly how destructive that delusion is because this grand, prophesied conspiracy doesn't even last the weekend.
The entire plot unravels in a matter of hours.
It completely spectacularly collapses.
The priceless stone dragon egg. The very thing Daemon needs to prove his divine right. The centerpiece of the whole rebellion is stolen in the dead of night.
It just vanishes from Lord Butterwell's heavily guarded bedchamber.
And the reaction from these so-called noble lords is terrifying to witness.
Let's look at the actual mechanism of the theft. You don't just walk out with a dragon egg.
No, it's as heavy as a boulder.
The text implies a troupe of traveling dwarfs who had been performing at the wedding feast were actually covert operatives.
They likely climbed up the castle's privy shafts, the medieval toilets, to bypass the guards, infiltrate the bedchamber, and smuggle the egg out.
It's a humiliating, deeply unglamorous breach of security.
And the paranoia that infects Whitewalls is immediate and absolute.
The moment the egg goes missing, the grand illusion of their noble rebellion shatters.
They realize they are committing high treason, the physical evidence of their destiny is gone, and absolute panic sets in.
This is where we see the true ugly face of this rebellion.
Lord Gorman Peake, the guy who is so desperate to get his castles back, goes into full survival mode.
He needs a scapegoat to deflect blame from his own incompetent security, and he needs one fast.
So he falsely accuses a lowly knight named Sir Glendon Flowers of the theft.
He doesn't just casually accuse him. He has this young 16-year-old boy dragged out of his bed, thrown down into the darkest dungeons of Whitewalls, and brutally tortured.
It is genuinely sickening to read.
We go from this grand, lofty political chess match, this talk of divine destiny and royal bloodlines, straight into a visceral, cruel crime scene.
The noble veneer of chivalry falls away instantly.
And the reason Glendon Flowers is chosen is so calculated.
Glendon is a bastard. He's a hedge knight who claims to be the son of a famous warrior, but he has no proof.
He is desperate for validation, which is why he came to the tourney in the first place.
His low birth is his death sentence. It highlights a very dark reality about the structure of this feudal society.
This is how power operates when it is cornered.
When highborn lords fail, when their grand schemes collapse due to their own hubris and incompetence, they never take responsibility.
They immediately look for the lowest, most vulnerable person in the room to crush in order to save their own skins.
They throw the intern into the wood chipper to save the CEO.
And with literal medieval torture devices. Glendon is chosen specifically because he has no powerful family to send an army after them.
No wealth to buy his freedom, and no highborn allies to avenge him.
To men like Gorman Peake, Glendon isn't even a human being. He's a highly convenient, disposable piece of meat meant to absorb the blame.
It's the ultimate cruelty of class warfare disguised as justice.
The Lords of Whitewalls thought they could just break this boy in the dark.
They figured they'd extract a false confession, execute him quietly, and salvage their disastrous plot.
But they made a massive, fatal miscalculation. They did not account for a towering, stubborn anomaly in their midst.
Sir Duncan the Tall.
Dunk! Our massive 7-foot hedge knight.
Now, Dunk is already battered at this point.
He literally just survived an assassination attempt the night before someone tried to cut his throat in his tent.
But he is a true knight in spirit, if not in wealth, and he will not stand by while an innocent boy is broken.
He bursts into the Great Hall of Whitewalls during the morning feast.
His primary goal is actually to buy time for his squire to escape the castle.
We should mention his squire because it's critical.
No.
Dunk travels with a young, obnoxiously mouthy, bald boy named Egg.
But Egg's head is shaved for a very specific reason.
To hide the silver-gold hair of a Targaryen prince.
Egg is secretly Aegon Targaryen, a prince of the blood.
Yeah.
Dunk knows that if the rebel lords realize they have a royal hostage, Egg is dead.
So Dunk causes the biggest distraction possible. It is a moment of pure, desperate bravery that directly confronts the fake, polished chivalry of the rebel lords.
He marches right up to the high table.
Points a massive finger directly at Daemon Blackfyre, the man who thinks he's the divinely appointed king, and publicly accuses Lord Peake of the frame-up.
He lays it all out in front of everyone.
And then he invokes the ancient right of a trial by combat for the tortured Glendon.
Which puts Daemon in a completely impossible psychological position.
Right, because Daemon, despite his crippling arrogance and his delusion, genuinely views himself as a true chivalrous knight.
He believes he's the hero of the song, protected by divine prophecy.
If he denies a trial by combat, he looks like a tyrant before his reign even begins.
So, of course, he agrees to the trial.
But he goes a step further, fueled by his ego. He chooses to riot against Sir Glendon personally.
This setup is the absolute crux of the entire Second Blackfyre Rebellion. It's the defining moment.
Picture the morning of this duel. The sun is rising over the muddy, churned-up tourney field.
The air is thick and humid.
You have Daemon Blackfyre sitting atop a magnificent, heavily armored warhorse.
He's wearing pristine, gleaming armor. He looks every inch the legendary, untouchable warrior king out of a myth.
And across the muddy field from him, you have Sir Glendon Flowers.
This poor kid is strapped to his saddle because he has been tortured so severely he can barely sit upright on his own.
His armor is dented, his face is swollen and bloody, and his horse is just a common destrier. It's not a duel, it's an execution.
That is exactly what the rebel lords standing on the sidelines expect.
They are waiting for their new, shining king to easily crush this battered bastard and prove his unquestionable martial might to the realm.
It is supposed to be the ceremonial first blood of their grand war.
The trumpets blow, the horses charge down the lists, the lances lower.
Glendon can barely hold his weapon steady.
And then the absolute splintering, thunderous crash of wood.
Against every single odd, every expectation, the broken boy's lance strikes true.
Glendon hits Daemon perfectly in the chest. It's violent.
The impact is so forceful that Daemon is ripped right out of his saddle.
He flies backward off his warhorse and he just punches into the mud.
The great black dragon, the prophesied king, the chosen one, is utterly dismantled and left face down in the dirt by a nameless, battered boy from the gutters.
The symbolism here is staggering.
This duel serves as the perfect encapsulated metaphor for the entire Second Blackfyre Rebellion.
Break that down for us.
Well, Daemon represents the rebellion itself, a shiny, beautifully armored, hollow fantasy built entirely on arrogance and illusion.
He looks the part, but there's no substance.
Right. And Sir Glendon, on the other hand, represents the brutal, battered, unforgiving reality of Westeros.
The fantasy looks great on paper, but the moment it actually collides with hard reality, it shatters instantly.
It's a harsh awakening.
I look at it like a massively overhyped tech startup, the kind with catered lunches, visionary founders, and a billion-dollar valuation based entirely on vibes and destiny.
Oh, absolutely.
And then they actually launch their product, and they are utterly dismantled in an afternoon by a lone, sleep-deprived coder working out of a garage who actually knows how to build a functioning infrastructure.
The hype collides with competence, and the hype dies.
And just like that startup, their entire valuation was based on a fantasy. The lords of Whitewalls put all their stock in a man who couldn't even stay on his horse.
So Daemon's physical humiliation in the mud is profound. His pride is entirely shattered in front of the men he needs to lead into war.
But the real kicker here is that his physical humiliation is instantly eclipsed by a strategic humiliation that will echo through the annals of history.
The plot twist that changes everything.
Mere seconds, literally seconds after Daemon hits the ground beneath them starts to literally tremble.
Deep, resonant war horns blast from the tree line beyond the castle walls.
And as the sun continues to burn away the morning mist, it glints off of 500 armored lances, thousands of marching spears, and the massive, undeniable red dragon banners of the Iron Throne.
The royal army has arrived.
But it's not just some local militia that stumbled upon a traitorous wedding.
The army is led by the hand of the king himself, Lord Bloodraven.
We must establish who Bloodraven is to understand the gravity of this moment.
The hand of the king is the monarch's chief advisor, speaking with the king's voice and commanding his armies.
But Bloodraven is also the master of whisperers.
He is an albino with milk-white skin, long white hair, a red wine-stained birthmark on his face, and a single red eye.
He carries the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister. When we talk about espionage and state control in Westeros, Bloodraven is the terrifying gold standard.
He didn't just happen to find this rebellion by accident. He knew about it the entire time, from the very beginning.
He had spies deeply embedded inside the castle.
In fact, the texts heavily imply that Bloodraven was personally inside the castle the whole time.
The lore gets very specific about how he pulls this off using dark magic.
Glamour magic.
Right. Throughout the entire tourney, there has been a cynical, observant hedge knight named Sir Maynard Plum hanging around Dunk.
Plum wears a glittering moonstone brooch.
In the magic system of this world, specific gems can anchor visual illusions.
The texts mention that if you look closely at Plum, his features seem to shift, and his shadow doesn't quite match his body.
That was Bloodraven.
He was sitting in the corner, drinking ale, casually chatting with the conspirators, and watching these traitors dig their own graves.
It is chilling. Think about the mechanics of that.
He let them gather, he let them plot, he let them spend all their gold, organizing this massive tourney.
He let them commit treason in their hearts and in their words, right to his disguised face.
It highlights this sheer, terrifying competence of Bloodraven's regime.
This is an intelligence network so absolute, so pervasive, that it borders on the supernatural.
This isn't just omnipotence, it's omniscience weaponized as a form of state terror.
He didn't stop the rebellion before it started in their individual castles.
He let the infection draw itself to a single, highly concentrated point, Castle Whitewalls, so he could cauterize the wound all at once.
He only closed the snare when every single enemy of the crown was trapped in one room.
But hold on, we have to look at this critically.
Are we really giving Bloodraven a pass here? He let a 16-year-old kid, Glendon Flowers, get dragged into a dungeon and brutally tortured just to make his trap tighter.
He let innocent people get swept up in this paranoid nightmare.
Is he the ultimate protector of the realm, saving thousands of lives by stopping a second redgrass field?
Or is he a terrifying tyrant operating a surveillance state built on dark magic, who views human suffering as an acceptable cost of doing business?
That is the central philosophical tension of Bloodraven's character within the lore.
He operates under a brutal, cold utilitarianism.
He undeniably saves tens of thousands of lives by crushing this rebellion without a massive field battle.
But the method he uses, the magical surveillance, the psychological manipulation, the absolute control over information, the willingness to let innocents suffer for the greater trap, creates a state of perpetual, agonizing fear.
He protects the realm by ensuring that every lord in Westeros believes the walls are listening. It's a peace maintained entirely by paranoia.
And you see the effect of that fear instantly.
The moment the rebel lords at Whitewalls see Bloodraven's host cresting the ridge, their courage just evaporates.
There is no grand speech. There is no heroic last stand where they draw their swords, scream their war cries, and charge down the hill to die with honor.
The illusion of their bravery shatters just like Daemon's lance. They show their true colors.
They slink away like beaten dogs.
Men start tearing the Blackfyre badges off their cloaks. They abandon Daemon instantly.
And Daemon, to his credit, or perhaps his absolute terminal foolishness, rides out alone toward the royal army and demands single combat against Bloodraven.
He's still desperately trying to live inside a song.
He wants the glorious duel of commanders, a final clash of Valyrian steel to seal his legend.
And Bloodraven's response is the coldest, most dismissing thing I've ever read.
He ignores the challenge entirely.
He doesn't even bother drawing a sword. He just gestures to his guards, has his men drag the pretender off his horse, and locks him in golden chains.
That specific decision, the golden chains, is a political masterstroke.
It is the final decisive nail in the coffin of the Blackfyre cause at this particular moment in history.
Explain the deep strategy there. Why not just take his head?
That's the standard operating procedure for traitors in Westeros. You rebel, you lose, you get a spike on the Red Keep.
Because if Bloodraven executes Daemon II, Daemon achieves in death what he couldn't achieve in life. He becomes a martyr.
His blood would water the seeds of the next rebellion.
But more importantly, it's about the line of succession.
If Daemon dies, the Blackfyre exiles waiting across the narrow sea in Essos, specifically his fiercely loyal, battle-hardened uncle, Aegor Rivers, known as Bittersteel, will immediately crown Daemon's younger brother, Haegon.
Ah, the classic royal predicament, there's always a spare.
Exactly. Bittersteel commands the Golden Company, a massive mercenary army. If Haegon is crowned, the Golden Company sails for Westeros.
By keeping Daemon alive as a captive in King's Landing, bound in golden chains to mock his royal pretensions, Bloodraven essentially freezes the entire line of succession.
Haegon cannot legally or symbolically be crowned king, while his older brother, the true claimant, is still alive and breathing.
Bloodraven neuters the entire geopolitical threat without spilling a single drop of royal blood and without giving the exiles a heroic murder to rally behind.
He turns Daemon into a living placeholder.
That is the perfect term for it.
I am obsessed with the ruthless pragmatism of that strategy.
It's the medieval equivalent of buying the domain name of your biggest rival's new company.
And instead of shutting it down, you just leave the page completely blank. Forever.
So they can never launch their brand, they can never run an ad campaign, and everyone who goes looking for them just sees this empty, pathetic, inactive space.
That is precisely the psychological warfare Bloodraven waged. He left the Blackfyre brand blank and imprisoned in gold.
But I have to ask, in a martial society like Westeros, where prowess with a sword and a glorious death on the battlefield are the highest honors a man can achieve, is denying a warrior the death turning them into a useless living pawn actually the cruelest fate possible?
It is total psychological annihilation.
For a man who believed he was destined by divine prophecy to ride dragons, wield legendary swords, and rule a continent, being locked in a gilded cage while the world forgets you is a fate far worse than a sword through the heart.
Bloodraven didn't just defeat Daemon, he systematically erased his meaning. He made him irrelevant.
Bloodraven's political and psychological victory is absolute.
But as he reveals in his command tent in the aftermath of all this chaos, the magical undercurrent of this conflict, the stuff we all thought was just Daemon's tragic delusion, was actually completely real.
This is where the historical record takes a sharp turn from hard politics back into the mystical lore of the world.
Bloodraven brings Dunk and his young squire Egg into his tent.
And he drops this chilling whisper, this staggering truth that recontextualizes the entire deep dive.
Daemon Blackfyre wasn't crazy. His prophetic dragon dreams were right.
A dragon did hatch at Castle Whitewalls.
But it wasn't a beast born of stone and fire. The dragon was the boy. The dragon was Egg.
This is a phenomenal use of metaphor within the text.
What's fascinating here is how the young boy, Egg, transformed over the course of these harrowing events.
He started the tourney as a disguised peasant, a mouthy squire trying to hide his royal identity.
But when the crisis peaked, when the tension snapped and Dunk's life was on the line against the rebel lords, Egg shed that disguise.
He revealed his Targaryen ring. He commanded lords with the authority of the Iron Throne.
He showed undeniable courage to save his friends. Metaphorically, he broke out of his shell.
He hatched into the Targaryen prince and the destined king, Aegon V, he was always meant to be.
It is mind-blowing. Daemon's entire rebellion, this massive treasonous conspiracy that cost lords their ancestral castles and their lives, was ultimately just a violent incubator for the Iron Throne's future king to test his mettle.
If we look at how the author George R.R. Martin utilizes prophecy throughout his work, it perfectly illustrates one of his core themes.
He has famously described prophecy as a sword without a hilt. It is incredibly dangerous to the person trying to wield it.
Because there's no safe way to hold it. When you strike with a hiltless sword, you just slice your own hands to ribbons.
Daemon misread his own dream. He interpreted the magical imagery literally a literal stone egg hatching into a literal flying dragon.
That literal interpretation led to his total destruction and imprisonment.
But the profound tragedy of his character is that the prophecy was entirely true, just not for him.
He inadvertently facilitated the true hatching of his greatest rival's heir.
His doom was written in the very vision he believed promised his ultimate victory.
The layers of irony are just spectacular. The usurper's dream creates the true king.
And as the dust finally settles on this muddy humiliation, as the royal Targaryen banners flutter over the dismantled milk-white walls of Whitewalls, our heroes have to move on.
Bloodraven orders the castle torn down to the ground so it can never be a monument to treason.
The story of Westeros doesn't end with a victory, it just shifts to a colder, darker setting.
Right. With the rebellion crushed, the guilty lords executed or stripped of their remaining wealth, and their ransom paid, Dunk and Egg ride north.
They leave the smoldering ruins of Whitewalls behind, and they ride directly into a blistering, freezing wind.
Snow begins to fall on the King's Road. The looming, brutal winter is arriving.
They are leaving a political viper's nest in the south and entering a physical and dynastic deep freeze in the north.
Because the grim reality they are riding toward is Winterfell. And things are absolutely not going well in the north.
Lord Baron Stark lies dying in his bed.
The ancient, freezing stronghold is about to be completely consumed by a bloody succession crisis, ruled by ruthless, desperate widows fighting for control.
The infamous she-wolves of Winterfell.
Yes. A massive, battered hedge knight and a newly hatched, hidden prince are walking directly into the freezing fangs of these she-wolves.
Just picture those glowing yellow wolf eyes snapping open in the darkness of a northern blizzard.
It is a terrifying tease for what comes next in the archives.
It promises a completely different kind of danger.
If Whitewalls was about the illusions of summer, the pageantry of tourneys, and the arrogance of false kings, Winterfell will be about raw, unvarnished survival.
The politics of the North are rarely veiled in silks and fiddles. They are as stark, unforgiving, and brutal as the winter itself.
And it reminds us that in this dark history we've uncovered today, survival requires a lot more than just a sharp sword, a magical dream, or a prophesied destiny.
It requires knowing when you are a player making moves and when you are just a piece being moved on someone else's board.
Lord Bloodraven proved that perfectly. Daemon Blackfyre thought he was the undisputed player of the game, but he was just a pawn wrapped in gold.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over, something I want you, the listener, to really chew on before we return to the archives.
We've seen how Daemon's absolute belief in his own destiny led him directly into a trap that destroyed his life and erased his legacy.
If prophecy always comes true in the most unexpected, ruinous ways, if seeing the future only ensures you misinterpret it and cause your own downfall, is it actually better to be entirely blind to the future?
Is hope, based on destiny, just a prettier word for doom? Think about that.
And if you want to join us as we uncover more of these suppressed histories, make sure to subscribe to the deep dive.
Because the winter is coming, the snows are getting deeper, and the archives have many more dark secrets left to reveal.
Until next time, keep your eyes open and never ever trust the fiddler.